Welcome to Off the Post. I'm Russ Cohen. We've got Anthony Mingione. And how are you?
Doing okay, Russell? How are you?
Doing good. Doing good. Nice day. Got a huge umbrella put up in my yard the other day. I mean, it's 9 by 12. It will block out the sun. It'll block out most anything. So that's good. Now I can hang out there and be chill. And Michael Jello, how are you?
And one gust of wind and it ends up in your neighbor's yard.
No, it's got 150 pounds weighing it down. But thanks, Mike. 200 pounds. Thank you from the audience. So
that's Anna. Anna was talking.
Yeah, Anna talked.
Anna's officially using her language lessons.
Thanks for that confidence, Mike. All right, so I had gotten the email yesterday from the NHL that 11 players are going to file salary arbitration. We'll talk about Gabe Vilardi first because that's the interesting one. We don't know the dates. Nobody's going to know the dates.
Yeah, it's usually late July to early August.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if they only get a 1-year deal out of him, they're walking him right to UFA. I mean, I don't know what your guys' feeling is.
Yeah, they got to figure something out, Winnipeg, at this point now. It's like it's because you're going to start having vultures, circling.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're going to see other teams that are going to be looking at him and saying, well, I mean, if you guys don't have value for him, he's 24, 6'3", 210. He's going to get some offers here. I think we're going to need to be prepared for, depending on.
But now that he's elected arbitration, he's not eligible for the offer.
Right, he's not going to get those exactly. So, but they'll get. What will happen is, I think you'll get conversations with teams on the phone saying, if you're not going to hold on, if you're only going 1 year, would you like to get something that gives you more certainty in the future?
More certainty. Yeah. No, that's true. Now, I forget, did I see a rule now where they're only going to be 1-year arbitration awards?
No.
That's it? No. Okay.
No, it was clarified by Elliot Friedman today. 32 Thoughts. They did their sort of final podcast of the year. And in relation to the Sabres, and we'll talk about the Sabres in a minute, but just to tie in with this, if the player elects for arbitration, it's in control of the team of what term they want.
Okay.
If the player, now the team has until 5 p.m. on Sunday to elect to whether they want to go to arbitration with the player. And in that instance, then the player and their agent has the option of how long the term. So, for example, Bowen Byram, he's 2 years, like Vilardi, he's 2 years away from being a UFA. The agent,
I believe actually Vilardi. Actually, I was just checking. Vilardi, I think, is 2 years away. It's not next year. So apologies for that in terms of what was said on what we said earlier.
So
I've never seen a post that was weird about that. Okay, so it'll be 2 years.
In both instances, the agent will probably want to walk them to UFA and go and opt for the 2-year. 2-year deal. And that's the last thing that Winnipeg and Buffalo want, in the sense that they could lose the guy for nothing. So it's not like a gun to your head with an offer sheet, but it's in terms of getting
it's a very loud ticking clock.
Yes, in terms of getting max value for those players in deals, it's a problem.
Well, I mean, the one big thing about free agency and the cap going up is not everybody spent their money like normal. A lot of teams still have money. And so that does leave the trade avenue open. So
but you have to get the real loggerheads between the player and the team. And one of the things about Winnipeg and Vilardi is, do you get a sense that it's not acrimonious per se between?
No, but it's just not going anywhere.
No, exactly. In this circumstance, not going anywhere. But I would think if acrimony sets in, that's when you have to. That's when I think the conversations start.
Well, it's hard to find out. I mean, these days it's really hard to see when acrimony sets in. But I would say that
you'll know the agent. Listen, invariably there will be a insider who will say it.
I guess. I mean, the big thing with Vilardi is the fact that there is no real discussion being reported is bad.
Yeah, I think the issue here is, and
is this bad per se.
It's bad.
This would give me pause if I was Winnipeg. There's no doubt that Velarde is extremely talented, but we know what the issue has been with him, like the issue was with Nikolai Ehlers, and that's durability. If you sign him to a long-term deal, how much are you getting out of him every year? That's why I would hesitate to give him a long-term deal, because he's there for 60 games every year. If he's there,
but I would just go back to, who are you going to get that's going to replace him that's willing to play in Winnipeg?
Well, yes, but the question is he?
Or you trade somebody that you've got under a longer term contract who doesn't have that.
Yeah, you might get 3 years for 2 years. I mean, I don't think you're going to get much more than that.
It could be longer than that. Maybe it's a case where you look to send out one of you. Maybe it's a case where a team has signed a player who's maybe on the younger side, who, after a year or two, maybe they're just looking at it and going, well, we're not so sure about this investment in him in the long term. But another team might look at it and say, hey, based on what that player is, we're willing to take that on because we have a roster certainty.
Well, I mean, right now, I look at Winnipeg, and they're about $20 million under the cap, according to Cap Wages and Puckpedia. So, and right now, they have a few players who are expiring contracts after this year, but the big one is Kyle Connor. Now the cap's going up, so they're going to want to sign Kyle Connor long term. They probably want to watch their P's and Q's in terms of Velarde, because if they sign Velarde for too big of a number, then it's going to be tough to sign Connor under a big number as well. And they appear to be, even though their owner has more money than God, they seem to be on a budget.
Yeah,
so
they're on a budget based on the size of their rink and not selling enough IPAs like Pete says, and whatever else is not meeting standards to make more money.
It's not IPAs versus personal seat, like what was it? PSLs versus IPA. What's our PSL to IPA ratio?
I mean, we always go back to it. It's a smaller rink. Yes, they used to fill it up, and now apparently they don't always fill it up. But it's still a smaller rink. It's going to have less revenue. Like, that's was always going to be the case.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the risk again that they take here, which is why, again, we get to late July and we're getting close on ARB numbers here.
Yeah.
There's a conversation to have.
So we'll flip it over to the Flyers, where Cam York is not on that list.
No.
Which does leave the possibility of an offer sheet there, because if they don't file for it from the player side, that means the player could be open to signing an offer sheet elsewhere.
But it also could mean they're getting quietly close enough along.
It's one or the other.
It's one or the other, but it could signal either. So the half empty one is your offer sheeting. The half full is maybe both sides are feeling like even though it's slow, it's getting close. And I'm leaning more towards that latter, where I think they're probably getting closer on the contract than it is the other way.
I feel like they're somewhat close because, Briere talked about it before the draft, but there is always a point where a player will accept an offer sheet because he just feels like, hey, this money's so much better and this isn't going anywhere as far as negotiations. And I feel like if you get to the end of July, let's say, if it got to the end of July, I think it would be offer sheet season. So I think they have to get it done in the next couple of weeks. That's my personal feeling.
My gut feeling is it does have to get done in the next couple of weeks, but my feeling is it probably will.
Well, I mean, that's where St. Louis waited when it came to Edmonton, was late July, because they wanted to wait until, like, they added Arvidsson, they added Skinner on a free agent deal. They added all these players to sort of wean down, wait until Edmonton didn't have the cap space to match the offers, and then they were in a vulnerable position. I mean, obviously Edmonton should have been more proactive on the guys who were restricted free agents, unless their goal was always to sign the offer sheet. In the case of York, I'll yield to you guys in terms of whether he wants to be there or whether they think.
Well, I think he wants to be there.
To be there, I do.
I think the Flyers only want him there at a certain price. I think that's the way it goes.
Probably also at a certain and only at a certain term. He's not. Correct. He's not to the point of his development where I would feel comfortable with him being on a really long term.
Yeah, you wouldn't want him on 7 or 8.
I think it's a conversation of probably 3 to 4 years here, and and then that conversation becomes
that's when the AAV goes.
That's the AAV, and then if there's certain things that are put into place into the deal,
he's 3 years away from UFA,
right? So there you go. So
maybe the compromise here is another 1 year and push it down the road.
I'm doubtful on it being just a 1 year deal.
No, it won't be 1 year.
If anything, what Philly probably would want to do here is maybe bridge +1. Maybe in this case, they do a 4 year deal to buy at least 1 year of unrestricted free agency.
I think that's the most likely,
and I think that's the scenario. And also, it allows you to maybe pair. It'll still be on the highish AAV, and Flyer fans will lose their. They will at the AAV on the contract, but if you
have to read
if you're
a landscape,
you have to read the landscape, and the risk of it is obviously that once that deal goes into place, as the cap continues to go up, that how high that number potentially will be.
Well, if you're buying a year of unrestricted free agency and based on the ridiculous prices that we've seen, like Kevin Ball getting $5.5 million, you're on a 4 year deal. You're probably talking about $5 million at least.
I think that's absolutely the floor. And honestly, for the role that York is in, that's appropriate. $5 million at 4 years to me would be a bargain for Philly.
Yeah. I could see 5.75. Being the number. I could see 5.75 being the number.
5.75 might push to 6. Could be like a 4 year, $24 million contract where he has a $6 million cap hit in this circumstance. It could be, again, based on where he's at, I think that would be probably a number that, again, if he's top 4 defenseman, which he is, possible top pairing with Travis Sanheim, these are the things you have to do.
Speaking of Travis Sanheim, Sportsnet put out a list for the Olympic team and kept Sanheim off the list. Konechny was on it for the Olympics, but Sanheim was off it.
Am I completely surprised by that? I thought he performed well.
So I'm a little surprised.
But I wonder how much of this is a reflection also on people look at Philadelphia and it's just, I wonder if it's as much the team and just like, unless they're a playoff team.
Yeah.
We're not. He's going to be on the outside.
They weren't a playoff team
when we're talking defense. Like you can you can connect me. You can absolutely see in a role when you have more lineup options here.
Yeah, but I mean,
I think Sanheim should be on the Canadians on the Olympic team. I think he proved himself pretty. He did a pretty good job, I thought, at Four Nations.
I would be a little surprised because the rosters are 25 players for the Olympics, so they'll probably carry 8 defensemen. And I mean, he played well in the Four Nations. So, and Canada is a creature of habit in terms of if the player plays well and he's not over the hill, then he's going to be back. So, I would think Sanheim will be back. I mean, there's not
back, but I think it may also be a case where on Team Canada's like he had a really good, he had a really good year. He developed well under Bradshaw. Now he's with a new coach, new defense coach. I think there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, at the moment, it's what we want to see. But if he has another really good year this year, I think then he's probably on.
Here are the lefty that they had.
Theodore
Taves, Josh Morrissey, Shea Theodore, Thomas Harley. He would have to beat out Harley. That's really what it boils down.
And that's going to be that's a
formidable
battle. That's a formidable battle there with the way Harley played in Dallas. So I'm like I said, it's not surprising me. I know somebody may say, well, he's ranked 47th. I forget what was the poll that came out recently out of 50 or something. Not defense. I think I was amongst defensemen. So even sort of the national view on him is nice performance. Need to see more.
That's what I just thought it'd be worthy of bringing up. Mike, we hear these rumblings like, hey, St. Louis is trying to get a deal for Bowen Byram. And it's like, I get it from Buffalo's perspective. Mm-hmm. I probably don't get St. Louis anymore. Like, I don't even think St. Louis has a plan. I think they just target players and say, yeah, he'd look good on the team. Yeah, this guy would look good on the team. But I don't think they have a specific plan And we know Buffalo doesn't have a plan, so please interpret all of this.
I think the plan from the part of St. Louis is, except for Philip Broberg, our defense is ready for retirement. I mean, Justin Falk is 33, Parayko's 32, Fowler's 33. They got rid of Ryan Suter. So, you've got a 22-year-old Logan Mailloux and a 24-year-old Philip Broberg. I think they look at Bowen Byram 2 years down the line and say that's our number one defenseman. So,
so let's stop there.
Yeah.
You've seen enough of Byram. I've seen enough of him in his career. Yeah. He's not a number one defenseman. What do you think?
He might be a top pairing defenseman. He was a top pairing defenseman with Buffalo, and he was
Buffalo.
playing.
So that's the bottom of the league, top pairing defenseman.
Right.
You go into St. Louis, which is middle of the league. That's a big jump.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I didn't say. I mean, he's a top pairing defenseman on a middle of the road team. Well, that's St. Louis, and that's what they are. But the question is, from the Buffalo perspective, and I wrote about this at the Hockey News, is what are they looking for in terms of, because stick with what Kevin Adams is saying. I want players back. I don't want prospects back. Okay. So the only two names that come out in terms of what they would want for a guy who St. Louis probably is looking for as a top pairing defenseman. One is Jake Neighbors, who's under contract. He's had a couple 20-goal seasons. Right. He's under contract for 2 more years. He's the right age. He's 23 years old.
And
the other one, what's that?
And he's big.
And Jimmy Snuggerud, who
they're not trading Snuggerud,
right? But Russ, that's what I'm saying.
Like, I know.
That you're not trading Broberg, and I don't think the Sabres want him.
They're not trading Broberg, Snuggerud. They could get Neighbors,
right? So it's either Neighbors, Snuggerud, and the only other one I wrote was, and this would not fit what Buffalo is looking for, is Dvorsky, who's having
not trading him either.
Right. So that okay, but he's in their mind, and probably in St. Louis's mind, he improves their defense dramatically, and he's going to need to be signed to a long-term contract, which probably cost them $8 to $9 million.
I get what you're saying. So if they had to trade somebody other than Neighbors, it probably would be Snuggerud over Dvorsky.
Right.
But again, then I beg the question: why didn't the Sabres just draft him in the first place? His father played there. He wanted to play there. Why didn't they draft him in the first place?
Well, you could say the same thing about the other team that David Pagnotta linked them to, which was San Jose. And I can understand San Jose wanting Byram because if you look at their defense, everyone except Orlov, who signed a 2-year deal, I think everyone is a UFA after this year. They have they had the Sabres traded their first-round pick to San Jose, and San Jose drafted Sam Dickinson. They could have drafted Sam Dickinson. Now, they ended up with Hellenius, but they could have ended up with Hellenius at 11, but they traded down so they could get Beck Malenstein. He was a real difference maker last year. But so, I mean, and if you look at San Jose, there's not a match there except for one player, because they're not trading Celebrini, they're not trading Will Smith, they're not trading whoever they drafted this year, they're not trading Misa. Okay, so the only guy is William Eklund, and I don't think they're trading William Eklund. So they don't have.
They might trade Cole McKinney or someone like that they drafted this year. It's possible,
right? But it's possible, but that's not what Buffalo's looking. Buffalo, because of their situation, because of the fact that they've missed the playoffs for 14 years, because of the fact that we just talked about with Winnipeg, nobody wants to play. Everybody has them on their no trade list. They need players under contract, players that do not have no trade protection. Jake Neighbors does not have any no trade protection, so that's a fit. William Eklund has no trade protection. That's a fit. But that's what Buffalo is relegated to because nobody wants to play here right now.
Okay, but hammering back on the other point. So we play Remember When in the 2022 draft.
Yep.
Buffalo's up there, 16. Russ Cohen figures they're going with Snuggerud. He's got the history there. And they go with Noah Ostlund.
Yeah.
That's just not going to age well.
No. I mean, you look at that draft at 9, they take an undersized forward in Savoy.
Right.
Great talent, but, small.
Yeah.
They take a slight Swede in Noah Ostlund, really talented, played well at the World Juniors. Like 2 years before, the year before, 2 years before, they took Isak Rosen, another slight Swede. And the best pick of the three picks they had in Montreal was the guy they picked at the end of the first round, which was Kulich. So it's like, yeah, their record in terms of
draft worked out though. The others,
right?
So far,
it is kind of wild to think about the fact that I always go back to the Roseanne trade, because knowing that 13th pick was from the Ristolainen trade,
right?
And Ristolainen has turned out to be, with the injuries and everything, okay for the Flyers.
Right.
And the Kulich pick was from the Sam Reinhart deal.
Yeah. And the Kulich pick is a good pick. That one they made a good pick. But again, I go back to Snuggerud, because if you listen to him at the combine, I have the audio somewhere. All he talked about was Buffalo. Buffalo. My dad.
All reporters were asking about was Buffalo.
No, but he was still
like James Higgins with the Islanders over and over and over again.
True, right. But this was achievable. Like they, six picks before. Like it makes no sense.
Yeah,
that's the Sabres.
Yes.
So, Mike, the Leafs, what are they up to?
Well, I mean, they weren't up to much on July 1st, other than getting Nick Roy, as Don Cherry would call him, Nick Waugh. And like I said, I think that's a good addition. But, everybody, shock, folks. The Leafs aren't as good right now because they lost a 100-point player. Who the bleep would be as good losing a 100-point player? And I just have to say this.
But it's going to come up. Like
right. But it's such low-hanging fruit, to use Jeff Merrick's old phrase, it's low-hanging fruit, but it's still nutritious. I get it. But the point here is, first of all, the summer's not over. Second of all, they have cap space.
Cap over, Mike.
Second of all, they have cap space, and there are players out there. There is the possibility of a trade, although I don't buy this stuff out there. And anybody who wants a tutorial on the Marner situation, I recommend watching the Dangle podcast from last week, right after July 1st, because it was phenomenal how he just sort of broke it down. But I look at the Leafs right now, and I mentioned to you, and I wrote something at Hockey Hot Stove earlier in the week about potential Leafs targets. If you look at who is remaining as an unrestricted free agent, and Elliot Friedman on the 32 Thoughts mentioned the same name, Jack Roslovic. Now, granted, I'm telling you, Jack Roslovic is not a star player. If he was a star player, he would have signed by now. But he pointed out the same things that I pointed out when I wrote about him. He played with Austin Matthews in the NTDP. He scored 22 goals last season with Carolina. He's a right shot. There's some familiarity there, and he's had trouble since getting signed by Columbus. It was a 1-year deal with Carolina. I think if he has an opportunity to play with Matthews in a situation in Toronto, he could set himself up for a big payday, which is the thing that the Leafs, I think, are always looking for. They're looking for a player to take a 1-year deal to basically set himself up for a potential of making big money. And this is a perfect scenario. If it doesn't work out, then, it depends on what he's asking for, because I think he made.
Yeah, I wouldn't sign him for more than the 1-year deal, because I just go back to what you said about Columbus. I gotten reports from Columbus that he wasn't great there. Rangers wasn't good there. People disagreed with me when I said he's not going to fit in there. I get the Matthews thing, but I can go back and say, hey, look, Connor Brown just had a chance to play with his old buddy, and he had 30 points. Like, it wasn't the greatest year. So, like, if Roslovic gets 40 points, okay, but
Connor Brown had
35 points.
Connor Brown was coming off an ACL, so it's like, so you have to cut him a little bit of slack in terms.
All right, I'll give him a little more slack, but.
I think you're also, at the end of the day, you're counting on Matt Nyes at this point now to really make his
yes.
Yeah, you're counting on him a lot.
Really emerge, sure. And if you have those other parts, again, hating to use that money ball in the aggregate,
right?
But that Nyes takes a chunk of that aggregate and you fill it and you figure it out with other guys.
Yeah, but the question is, Nyes had 58 points last year. How much more than 58 is he going to get next
10 more points.
Yeah, at most. So it's like, so that's 10, and then if Michelli has a good year,
I'll give him 40. I'll be generous.
40, you say 40 to 50 at best, and then 50 would be a career high. So you still need, they're still looking for 40 points, and you have a void on the right side of the top line or the second line. I think you're putting all your eggs in one basket if you put Nylander with Matthews. You're probably better off leaving Nylander with Tavares on the second line. But so, I mean, Roslovic could plug in there, and he could maybe provide those 40 points. You know, you could move Max Domi up to the top line on the right side, because he did that before, and that worked for a time. But I don't, you know, he's so bad defensively.
He's diminishing as a player, I think.
He's so bad defensively. I mean, the other option, and I'm going to write about these like this week. The other option would be Jeff Skinner, who I know wants to play in Toronto because he's from there. He signed in Buffalo because it was close to his family in Toronto. It would probably be a dream for him to play for the Leafs. The problem is he's a left shot, and he would have to play on his off wing. And he probably could get away with that. He's enough of a veteran that he could get away with it. But I don't know what's left, Russ. I mean, he's not as fast as he used to be. And he didn't show a lot in Edmonton. But in Edmonton, they signed him thinking he was going to play with Draisaitl and McDavid, and then he was playing third line, fourth line.
I mean, look, Jeff Skinner can always skate, right? And if you're asking me to take a 2-year gamble on a player, I'm going to still take Skinner over Roslovic, because Skinner has played with higher caliber guys most of his career more than Roslovic. So I feel like if you're going to plug in 50 points on a surprise year, you're better chance on getting it from Skinner than you are from any of these other guys we're talking about. So I think you almost have to look at that and say maybe the drive of him finally wanting to play there will get him there.
Mike, you think Cowan's going to figure into this, Mike?
I think they want him to, because okay, let's just say this. There's talk out there, and I think it was pretty much shot down this week that Nazem Kadri would waive his no trade clause to come.
We had fun with that
to come to Toronto. But the problem is that Don Maloney and Murray Edwards, the owners in Calgary, will never trade anyone to Toronto because they despise Brad Treliving. Apparently, when they were talking about trading for Chris Tanev before last year, the Leafs offered more, and they instead traded him to Dallas with a lesser offer. So it's like it's not going to happen as much as maybe Kadri and the Leafs would want to. So I can breathe a sigh of relief that cancer won't come back. But it's the price of any top six forward like a Brian Rust or a Ricard Raquel. The first name is going to be Cowan. And I'm all for, if you sign a Roslovic, okay, he plugs in on the top line, then the pressure is off to force Cowan into the NHL. He might be ready for it, but it might be better to put him on a third line with Nick Waugh than to put him on the number one line and expect him to be Mitch Marner 2.0. I think that's unfair to the kid. He's 20 years old. Maybe he starts in the American League. That's a lot. He seems ready for it, but he's talk.
I will say he's close.
Yeah, you can talk a good game in development camp, but I'm sorry. There's a lot of the big difference between that and the beginning of the regular season. And I'll bet you anything, before training camp, you will see the Leafs probably sign 2 or 3 guys to PTOs to sort of test the waters. I don't think Roslovic's going to be. He's going to get a contract from somebody, but according to Friedman, he's waiting around, and the Leafs are probably trying to trade out some of the guys like Camp or Yarncroke to clear cap space.
Yeah, I mean, Cowan's a good talker. I interviewed him at the rookie photo shoot last year, and he was trying to talk his way into a Leaf spot last year. So he's a good talker. But you could see where maturity-wise, not because of the way he speaks, physical maturity this is where I would rather see him start in the AHL. And if he rips it up, hey, bring him up by all means. But the physical maturity is going to matter with the way how he's going to score in the NHL. And it's different than Nyes. Nyes was always like a man-child that way. Cowan's still building towards something. Right.
Haley Wickenheiser said that being in physical shape is not a question with him. Apparently they think he's in great shape. He wants to put on some poundage. He wants to get up to like 185. not lose his speed. So they're not concerned about that. It's probably, the experience thing. And you just don't want to force a 20-year-old who may not be ready for the NHL into the NHL before his time.
All right. I'm going to entertain this statement in question, whatever, from the chat room, because this guy named Patty Mafia has got a little picture of James Gandolfini, and he's saying Nicky Robertson doing arbitration. He's making him sound like a guy from Goodfellas. So, all right, Mike, and rest in peace, Michael Madsen, right? Because he was in one of Reservoir Dogs or one of those movies. What do we think about Nicky Robertson, who I don't believe he's ever been called that, but that's okay.
If anybody's called him that, it's Joe Bowen, and probably in a when he scored a big goal. I mean, he's going to arbitration, and after scoring 15 goals last year, I believe, which was his career high,
right?
He's probably going to get $1.5 million, $2 million, and is that going to spur him being traded because he's not a fit there? Maybe.
Right. That's the big question.
Right.
Does Berube believe in him? Because I'm not sure.
Berube has believed in him, but the problem is, Russ, he falls into his old habits. He makes a bad defensive play, then Berube benches him, then he brings him back a couple games later, and he scores 2 goals. He always gets that that wake up call, and he snaps 2. But it always goes back. He is a player with a top 6 skill set in a bottom 6 body. He's not, so, I mean, I like Nick Robertson. I think now the problem is that the value for him on the market probably isn't there that they would like for a guy who, if he's playing a top 6 on a team like a Utah or something like that, could score 30 goals. I'm very convinced he goes to the right place, he's going to be a 30 goal scorer, but they want to get a return for him. And I don't know whether that they'll be able to, other than like a draft pick, and they don't want a draft pick. I think they want players like everybody else wants players.
Right. All right. I mean, he could end up being that guy that out of camp, they're looking for 18, 19 goals out of Robertson, where he could legitimately give it to him.
Yeah, so, and Patty in the chat, I'm hearing Riley for Kadri. I'm hearing you're an idiot.
See, it goes there. I will say this. This is something I looked at the other day, Mike, and I will bring it up to you now, that we all talk about Morgan Riley. I still think he can play. There are some Leaf fans that don't believe that.
Yes.
No problem. But in the last 4 years, they have not even tried to draft a replacement, and I don't understand why. They have no offensive defenseman that would play that role in their system. Why not?
Yeah, I'll give you the main reason why Morgan Riley will not be traded. If they trade Morgan Riley, their point man on their power play is Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Okay, and now with Mitch Marner gone, who was essentially the point man on their power play the entire year with that dumb 5-forward power play. I don't care how successful it was. It cost them shorthanded goals at the worst possible times. Their point man is Morgan Riley. You need him. So, he played pretty good in the playoffs until he got beaten to a pulp by the Florida forecheck, like everybody else on that Toronto blue line. He doesn't want to go. They basically, they said, would you waive your no move? He said, no. So forget about it. It's not happening, folks.
Or should we say, forget about it?
Forget about it. Yeah.
But you didn't answer the other question. In the last 4 drafts, why haven't the Leafs drafted a potential offensive defenseman to play the power play? Ben Danford is not that guy.
No, Ben Danford
drafted that guy.
Ben Danford is Chris Tanev 2.0. Well, right. Maybe Russ, they may have drafted that guy, and Victor Johansson in the 4th round of last year's draft, who nobody heard of until.
So I guess you're going to agree with me that they should have been drafting for the.
Long story short, yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's
yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
You're off the stand. All right. That's it for Off the Post.
Russ.
What? Oh, yes. You have an announcement. Sorry.
Yes. Thank you. Interesting thing happened, but we'll get into this now. So I'm going to be, Russ and I will both be covering this afternoon's developmental camp scrimmage today. It's going to be my last one event covering for Center Ice Philly, though. I just want to say It's been an honor covering the Flyers for the publication of the website for the past decade. I want to thank, obviously, Chris Rubert, publisher and editor, who gave me this opportunity to do so. But there's some good change on the horizon. I'm excited to say I'm joining Mike at Hockey Hot Stove, and I'm joining Hockey Hot Stove as a staff writer covering the Flyers. I'll be bringing over my Flyer Thoughts column, and also there's no change, obviously, to my role here on Off the Post Radio. So obviously we'll be continuing with that as well. I'm really excited to be on the ground floor of something new like this. So Mike, Bill, I want to obviously thank Mike and Bill Meltzer, obviously, who's the chief operating officer, and Chris Terrian as well for the opportunity to help Hockey Hot Stove grow. So yeah, again, it's some change, but again, going to continue obviously covering the Flyers. But look for my last piece on Center Ice Philly, probably sometime this evening, touching on developmental camp, and then my stuff will be heading over to Hockey Hot Stove.
We are more than glad to have you, Anthony.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Now that's it. That's it for Off the Post. We'll catch everybody next time.
Take care, everybody.